Welcome to Motor Week. On today's programme, Ginny Buckley drives the limited edition Puma Sport. Chris Goffey test drives the Seat Leon. Richard Hammond gets to grips with Vauxhall's latest offering, the Astra Coupe. And Ford's innovative 24/7.
It doesn't always pay to be the loudest in your class, and just because a car's new doesn't mean it immediately has to be the most expensive or the fastest, the biggest or the cheapest in its class. At least that's what Vauxhall would have us believe when it comes to the launch of this, the new Astra Coupe, their new entry into the ever-burgeoning lifestyle-led coupe market. If you approach it stealthily and catch it by surprise, particularly at the rear, there's something of the glamorous Volvo C70 coupe about it. I don't know what, it might be to do with the way the rear pillars meet up with the bodywork or perhaps the shape of the glass, but it does. And that's a good thing because Vauxhall are positioning their new coupe right in the middle of the market, so it's neither a big glamorous coupe nor a pocket rocket like the Ford Puma. Don't let the rather conservatively designed exterior fool you, because inside they just go crazy. There's a huge range of options to choose from. If you go for leather, you can pick from 3 different colours, or you can even have this, let's say, striking is the best way to put it, Alcantara and leather mix. Then you can specify the colour of the centre console. You can have this finish or a kind of bronzy one. Then there's your dials, black or white. Then there's surrounds on the dials. They can be aluminium or chrome. And there's all the bells and whistles in here too. We have all the toys we need to keep us entertained on a long journey. So we've got a CD player as standard, air conditioning, of course. And as a rather expensive optional extra, there's full colour screened interactive satellite navigation system. There's certainly no shortage of kit in here. And once you've specified it up to the way you want it, it will probably be more or less unlike any other you meet. There'll be 3 trim levels for the UK, with the top spec reserved for the 2-litre turbo. And good news, it comes ready boy race it up for you, with a special big chromy tailpipe adornment and, believe it or not, coloured brake calipers, as well as meaty 17-inch alloy wheels. It must have been very tempting for the designers just to take the ordinary Astra Sport chassis and bung a nice slopey coupe body on it. But bless them, they didn't. They worked a bit harder than that. So they've modified the suspension quite a lot. We've got firmer springs and increased damper rates, whatever that is. We've also got a lot lower car, so what you get is a much more coupe-like ride and drive. Every panel of the coupe is entirely new. The design comes courtesy of collaboration with Italian styling house Bertoni, in whose factory the car will be built. Ah, yes, oily bits. Well, you get a choice of 3 engines. It starts with a 1.8 litre. There's this, which is a 2.2 all aluminium, completely new engine, which is actually very, very strong. It's got huge mid-range. All the power seems to be up to and around 3 to 4 to 5,000 revs, which is great for punting it between corners. Then there is the top fire-breathing 2-litre turbo with about 190 odd brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in something like 6.7 seconds and a top speed of 149. Quite fast. The frameless doors, a real coupe styling cue, were considered a must-have by the suits in charge, and it may not have been easy to achieve. It's always rather difficult getting pillarless doors to seal properly, but it looks proper and it makes things easier when the cabriolet comes along, which it will. Do you know, I think they're right not to try and set the world on fire with their new coupe. If you want to be glamorous, buy a Fiat coupe. If you want to zap around town at high speed, buy a Ford Puma. If you want to be très élégant and chase the sun in the south of France, buy a Peugeot 406 coupe. But for punters looking for a good, solidly built, probably very reliable and certainly very handsome coupe from a big brand manufacturer for between 16 and 20 grand, I reckon Vauxhall have just about got it sorted.
If you've ever seen Steve McQueen in Bullitt, I'm sure you'll agree it's one of the best car chases ever. Real American muscle cars and the original King of Cool, an unbeatable combination, and one that's helped Ford sell lots and lots of cars. You see, computer wizardry brought the long-dead McQueen back from the grave and put him behind the wheel of the Puma for Ford's TV ads. It was a move that made the Puma the UK's best-selling coupe and the only Ford with a waiting list. All very clever marketing. But would the macho Frank Bullitt really have traded in his power-packed Mustang for something that produces just 123 brake horsepower? Somehow I doubt it. But I reckon he could well have been tempted by this, Ford's pumped-up version, the Racing Puma. Ford's motorsport team sent the Puma down the gym to build up some extra muscles, and the result is a limited edition of 1,000 Pumas bearing the racing badge that are now lower, meaner and far sexier than before. And the next step was for Ford's long-standing partner Tickford to get their hands on the little cat. They stripped and rebuilt the twin-cam four-cylinder engine to boost the power up to 153 brake horsepower. Top speed was now up to 126 miles an hour, 0 to 60 down to just under 8 seconds. And the price tag, well, that was up as well, I'm afraid, £23,000. And when you consider that the 1.7 version of the Puma is £15,000, that works out, at about £8,000 extra for the pleasure of shaving a second off your 0 to 60 time and adding 3 miles per hour onto your top speed, which does make them rather expensive seconds. But hang on just a minute, because there's more to this car than a couple of seconds here and there. This is a great car because of its handling. Now, the Puma was always a superb car to drive, but the revisions to the Racing Puma have made it a handling dream. Tuned suspension and revisions to the springs mean that it's got absolutely bags of grip. It goes around this track as if it's on rails, even on a wet, miserable, damp day like this. The steering now has got so much response that it almost chatters away to you as you drive along. In fact, it's almost a little bit too responsive for my liking. It's very immediate. You need to be a bit wary of it on a few of these tight bends. The gearbox is very, very slick. Just a flick of the wrist sends it to where you want it to go. Push the Puma and it really does just keep on going. Make a mistake in it and it's that capable. It can cover up for you. And when you need it, there's a very nice insurance policy. The brakes. You'll be pleased to hear you get instant response. In fact, they're so strong that the Racing Puma has the potential to outbrake a 911 GT3. But while the Racing Puma is every boy racer's dream, caning it around a very smooth track like this, on a road like this, it's a bit of a pain, literally. You see, the suspension is so hard that on dodgy roads you feel every single lump and bump, or rather your back does anyway. Oh yes, it makes you realise what a rather shocking state our roads are actually in. But apart from getting on excellent terms with your local potholes, you can still appreciate how superbly the Puma handles in day-to-day driving. There's plenty of punch from the engine for quick overtaking around town, although as you can imagine, this car may have a tendency to bring out the hooligan in you, so if you're the proud owner of a clean driving licence, then beware. The Racing Puma is a very rare breed of production car because it was born for the track and it feels really at home here. But at £23,000, it's a very expensive choice for an enthusiast. But as Ford are only planning to make 1,000 of these, I don't think they'll have too many problems selling them. And if you still go misty-eyed at the sight of an RS or an XR badge and you rue the day that Ford stopped making the Cosworth, then this will be just the car for you.
Join us after the break as Chris Goffey drives the Seat Leon and Richard Hammond takes a look at Ford's latest ideas for the future.
When I were a little lad and we had a fast car to drive, we used to pull on a pair of string-back driving gloves, just like Sterling Moss used to wear. Well, of course, nowadays your average saloon is twice as quick as the sports cars of those days. But just occasionally a new Euro box comes along that does demand something special in terms of hand gear. Because this is the Seat Leon 20T Turbo, 180 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, a maximum of 140 miles an hour and a 6-speed gearbox. What are we waiting for? No, I'm not that much of a poser. This is the latest interpretation of the Volkswagen Group's policy of spreading engines and chassis frames around all the different marques in their group. So this new Leon shares the same platform as Golf, as Bora, as Skoda Octavia, Audi TT. And the 1.8 turbocharged engine is chipped up to 180 brake horsepower. That's 30 brake horsepower more than the installation in the Golf. So what's it like to drive? Well, with one blot on my otherwise unblemished licence, I'm not about to try and find out on open roads for the next couple of years at least. You need a private test track for that. But driving it as an enthusiastic, normal driver would on British roads, it's very quick. Although there's such a generous spread of torque from the turbocharged engine that I'm not at all sure why we're using a 6-speed gearbox. I suspect it's there for street cred more than anything else. With these big fat Pirelli P6000 tyres and the wide alloys, you'd expect adhesion and road holding to be very good, and it is. You can really throw this Leon around. But for my taste, they've strapped the suspension down a little bit too hard, and this ceaseless jogging over bumps and imperfections, even on quite smooth motorways, would really get on your nerves after a while. It's becoming fascinating to see how the different nationalities are interpreting what is basically the same chassis frame, how the Czechs, the Germans and the Spanish do it. This, after all, is the Seat Golf, is the Leon, as opposed to the Toledo, which is the Seat Bora, if you follow me. I think the Spanish have done a brilliant job, and this really looks good. And you can't dispute the fact, it really is a hot car. It's easy to spot various components from the Volkswagen corporate parts bin in the layout of the interior, although they haven't got those nice Venetian blind air outlets you get on Passat and Golf. Apart from that though, damped cup holder, a very nice stereo CD player, air conditioning and climate control, all as standard. It's difficult not to be impressed by the Leon 20T Turbo because it does everything so well. It's very quick, it holds the road well, and that 180 brake horsepower engine is a jewel. Best news of all is the price. This is £15,999 all in. Now the equivalent 5-door Golf GTI with only 115 brake horsepower is £1,000 more. So this car makes an awful lot of sense.
Pinewood Studios, home of the gadget-laden Bond movie and concept cars. And boy, have I got a gadget for you, because Ford chose this as the location to launch their 24/7 concept to the British press. Now, as an avid viewer, you may recall that we first saw this concept at the Detroit Motor Show, when along with the rest of the world's motoring press, well, I think we may rather have missed the point. Whereas most concept cars are showcases for wild exterior shapes and attractive shells with rather disappointing cockpits, the 24/7 is all about the interior. What you see here could be called a box that contains a very real and very clever concept. And who better to explain just what it's all about than Lawrence van den Acker, the chief designer responsible for the project. What have you set out to do here, Lawrence?
With this project, we really try to merge communication and transportation. Communication is changing our world today. People want more and more information all the time. So with this project, we try to merge the two and come up with a user-friendly and responsible way of interacting with our cars and offer all this information.
So we know then that the interior of this is loaded with technology that you're going to talk us through. Have you not bothered with the exterior? I mean, the shape of it, what's that mean to you?
No, the exterior was very important because if we made such an innovative, radical interior, we couldn't shape it in a traditional automotive box. So therefore, with the exterior, we tried to stay away from traditional automotive shapes, as you can tell. It's very sheer, very product-like, very architectural, and the exterior is more a canvas, and it's as different from traditional cars as the iMac is from grey computer boxes. So we definitely want to make sure that the difference inside was reflected aesthetically also in the exterior.
And it's got no headlamps or tail lamps, I noticed.
Well, they're there only when you need them, and that in philosophy is very close to the instrument panel that you're going to see.
Right, well, enough talking about it. Let's have a look and see how it works, what it can actually do.
System startup. When it starts up, it will show you 4 different users. It's a family of 4. Mother Natalie, father Steve, and 2 sons, a son and a daughter, Jack and Elizabeth. So suppose we choose Natalie. Select driver Natalie.
Selecting.
It shows that she selected herself. Close user profile.
Gives her age away there as well.
Closing.
42.
Well, not everybody wants to know about that. And this is Natalie's world. She's into gardening, so she has flowers in the background, which she can change next week to
So we
something
can
else.
put whatever we want on the background of it.
Yes, not unlike your computer, you can custom design it to your personal taste. But if she's lost, for instance, or wants to find a friend in a new cafe, she can give a command and find Café Claude.
Locating.
Then it would start up the GPS system. It would locate a cafe and it would guide her to the cafe through traffic jams and one-way streets. Close GPS.
Closing.
Or if she wants to make a phone call, she would simply say, open cell.
Opening.
And then she could tell the system to dial mom, dial my son, dial dad at the office, or anything.
I noticed what looks suspiciously like a camera up there on the rear view mirror.
Yes, the camera here, we use it for several purposes. You can use it for video conferencing, so when you call each other, you can actually see each other. You can use it for aiming it at your baby in the back if you want to keep an eye on her or him. Or you can use it to take snapshots and email, touristy pictures from your holidays to your parents at home. Close cell.
So what's going to be the difference then if we decide to be Jack, say, instead of Natalie? What do we get?
Well, let's have a look. Select driver Jack.
Selecting.
Now Jack likes his female voice talking back to him.
Obviously. Very nice female voice.
Close user profile.
Closing.
Now Jack's world is very different. He's much more into gothic and dark music, and his music level is higher than his mother's. The first thing he wants to do is play his CDs. So he says, play CD 4.
Playing.
And he wants to be able to adjust every single detail on a CD player. But if, for instance, he wants to go to a rave party and send a friend of his the map, he can basically access it. Find South Dock Warehouse,
Locating.
which is the place where the rave party takes place. It locates the place, it shows a map, and he says, save map.
Saving.
And then he will send it to his friend's email address. Send map to joji@mindspring.net.
Sending.
It opens up his email and it accesses the internet and it sends the map. Obviously, all this will be voice controlled. And obviously, not everything you will do while driving. Some of the things like the entertainment side of it, you would definitely do when you're standing still. We don't want to get you into a more dangerous situation than possible. System shutdown. And you shut it down just like you would your normal computer.
And the whole thing goes to sleep, and there it is, once again, resting, looking, well, perhaps not like an entirely ordinary dashboard, but look, Lawrence, that's an incredible amount of technology.
Right.
More than I've got in my office, but you can take it with you on the move. How realistic is this? Is this just a wild concept? Will we see it? Can I buy one?
It's not as wild as you think it is. A lot of this technology we literally took off the shelf. Voice interaction is available on our Jaguar S-Class. Internet will be available in the next 2 to 3 years. Rear projection information displays, there's already existing prototypes made by Visteon, one of our main suppliers. So the technology exists, it's just a matter of how we put it together in a pretty dramatic fashion.
Now, there have been people who've turned around and said, what do you want all that in your car for? You want to get in your car to escape. It's away from the office and email and the phone and the internet and video cameras.
Right, and I can imagine that, but then just buy a Mustang.
Other end of the scale completely.
Yeah.
One final question, the name, 24/7, what does that mean?
Well, since you're connected all the time, it just basically says you're connected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can go on with your life, even while driving in your car.
Now, we've been chatting to the guys developing this concept, and the more you think about it, the more possibilities you start to see. For instance, you pull up at the lights and alongside pulls up a car with a young lady that you rather like the look of. Well, you can set up a link and send a message across. It won't guarantee a positive response, obviously, but you can send a message. Or say your parents with children. Youngster wants to borrow the car for a night out. Well, you can check how fast it's been driven when it gets back. Or maybe even impose a speed limit on it in the first instance. Or what if you fancy a night out on the town? Well, you can set it up so that you can have access to reviews and times of plays. You can book ahead at a restaurant. It'll show you the way there. The more you think, the possibilities are endless. And as Lawrence says, don't dismiss this as just more dream concept car technology. It's not that far away. We could be doing this very soon.
Join us next week on Motor Week when Ginny Buckley will be wrestling with the fine handling of the new MR2 and Richard Hammond drives the latest estate from Sweden, the V70 T5.